Welcome back, children. So, today we are going to start with the last short story in our syllabus, Chief Seattle's Speech. Remember one thing, for your ICSE 2021, two short stories have been removed from your syllabus, All Summer in a Day and The Blue Bead. So we are left with 8 stories, and this is the 8th or the last of the stories. With this story, we will conclude our syllabus for ICSE officially. Now, before I move on to this story, I would like to tell you something about this story. Chief Seattle's Speech. Chief Seattle was the chief of the Suquamish tribe. The Red Indians, who are the original inhabitants of America, they were also divided into sub-tribes, and Suquamish tribe was one of the tribes of the Red Indians, and Chief Seattle was their leader. Now, please pay attention. In 1854, this speech, which is there in your syllabus as a short story, this speech was delivered by Chief Seattle to the Red Indians. Now, obviously, Chief Seattle delivered the speech in his native language. But this speech was translated from that native language into English by Dr. Henry Smith, and that translation is in your syllabus. Now the question is, why did Chief Seattle give this speech? What is the reason behind giving this speech? What is the substance of this speech, and what is the significance of this speech? Now, as I was telling you, that the Red Indians are the original inhabitants of America. But as the whites started settling more and more in America, especially after the American independence, what happened was wars, battles, and clashes started between the Red Indians and the whites. In those wars and battles, the whites started winning and the Red Indians started losing heavily, and they started losing thousands of their men in these wars and battles. By 1854, when this speech was delivered, the number of Red Indians in America had come down to a bare minimum. Obviously, Red Indians were on the verge of extinction. Under these circumstances, what happened was, Isaac Stevens, the governor of Washington, sent a proposal to the chief of the Red Indians, that is Chief Seattle. The proposal was that the white government of America will buy the land of the Red Indians in the Washington area, and instead of that land, the whites will provide alternative land to the Red Indians towards the west of America to settle down. Now, the question was whether the Red Indians would accept this proposal or not. The speech that was given by Chief Seattle was given to the Red Indians to convince them that they better sell their land. Now, why did Chief Seattle give this proposal? Why did he want to surrender to the white settlers of America? There were reasons, and the reasons were very, very practical, logical, reasonable. Chief Seattle had realized that the Red Indians were now so few in number that it was not possible for them to carry on fighting against the whites. And if they continued to do so, they will all get killed and the Red Indians will come to an end. So, the reasonable and the more practical solution for the Red Indians would be to sign a treaty with the whites and end the enmity or the hostility. This is what Chief Seattle is telling the Red Indians in this speech. And he has a very good motive. The motive is to save the Red Indians from being wiped out from this world. But two things more you will have to remember. Even though Chief Seattle wants to accept this proposal, it is like surrendering to the whites. He agrees that whites and Red Indians cannot become brothers. They cannot become one. The Red Indians and the whites were two different races. Their gods were different. Their religions were different. Their way of living was different. Their faiths, beliefs, customs, culture, traditions were different. They can live together peacefully, but they can never live like brothers. Another thing Chief Seattle said. He said, if we have to accept the proposal of Sir Isaac Stevens and sell our land, one guarantee has to be given by the whites. What was the guarantee? Red Indians believed in life after death. For them, the spirits of the dead were holy. The graveyards of their dead were holy. And if a treaty was signed, after that, the Red Indians should be given the right and the freedom to visit those graveyards, which was a holy place for them. He wanted the Red Indians to be allowed to pay visits to the places where their forefathers had been laid to rest, otherwise which, he said, this treaty is not possible. That is what this speech is delivering. Now let us start with the story. Yonder sky that has wept tears of compassion upon my people for centuries untold, and which to us appears changeless and eternal, may change. Today is fair, tomorrow it may be overcast with clouds. Chief Seattle is saying, if you look at the sky, this sky had shed tears of pity and sympathy for the Red Indians for centuries. Because for centuries, the Red Indians have been defeated by the whites. The Red Indians have been killed mercilessly by the whites. The Red Indians have reduced in number due to these wars and battles against the whites. So the sky had shed tears of pity for the Red Indians. In the eyes of the Red Indians, in the eyes of anybody, the sky is eternal. It is everlasting. The sky never changes. But according to Chief Seattle, even the sky one day may change. Today the sky is clear and bright. Tomorrow the complexion of the sky may change. It can be covered with clouds. Now, why is he giving this example? He wants to show that the sky, which is considered eternal, everlasting, something that never changes, that sky may change, but whatever promise cheap Seattle will make to the whites, that promise or those promises will never change. My words are like the stars that never change. Cheap Seattle is saying, just as certain stars in the sky, like the pole star, just as it never changes its place and position, my words and promises will also never change. Whatever Seattle says, the great chief at Washington can rely upon with as much certainty as he can upon the return of the sun or the seasons. Now try to understand. I will start with the sun and the seasons. You know, every day the sun rises in the east, sets in the west. It's a universal phenomenon which does not change. Another thing, seasons change. Winter is followed by spring, spring is followed by summer, summer is followed by autumn, autumn is followed by winter again. This cycle never changes. Sir Isaac Stevens, the chief of Washington, the governor of Washington, can be rest assured that just as the sun rises and sets, it happens without any change. Just as seasons come and go without any change in their cycle or pattern, similarly the words of cheap Seattle will never change. It is as constant as the sun rising or setting. It is as constant as the cycle of seasons. The white chief says that big chief at Washington sends us greetings of friendship and goodwill. Sir Isaac Stevens has sent us a letter. In that letter, he has extended his friendship towards the Red Indians. He is ready to sign a peace treaty with the Red Indians. He wants to have good relationship with the Red Indians. This is kind of him, for we know he has little need of our friendship in return. Chief Seattle is saying that it is very, very kind and generous of Sir Isaac to send a proposal of friendship towards the Red Indians. In fact, the Red Indians have become so less, they have become so weak because of the few numbers that they are. There is no necessity for the whites to develop any friendship with the Red Indians. Despite that, Sir Isaac has extended a hand of friendship towards the Red Indians, which appears to be very kind and generous on his part. His people are many. His people meaning whites. Now the whites are plenty in number. They are like the grass that covers vast prairies. Here, again, he is giving a comparison or a simile. Just as a prairie or a vast grassland is covered with millions and billions of grass, similarly, America is now filled with thousands and thousands of whites. My people are few. My people meaning Red Indians. Red Indians are now very few in number. The They resemble the scattering trees of a storm-swept plain. Again, he is giving a comparison, a metaphor. He is saying, imagine a plain land with hundreds of trees. A huge storm or tempest comes. Due to that storm or tempest, most of the trees are broken or uprooted. Only a few are standing. We Red Indians are like that plain land devastated and destroyed by a storm. The uprooted trees are like the majority of the Red Indians who are already dead. The few trees that are still standing, they are like the few Red Indians still living and surviving, and they are very few in number. They resemble the great and I presume good white chief sends us word that he wishes to buy our land but is willing to allow us enough to live comfortably. Sir Isaac Stevens has sent us a proposal. The proposal is the governor is willing to buy the land of the Red Indians in the territory of Washington. But alternately, he will be providing us land somewhere else in the west of USA so that we can settle and live comfortably there. This indeed appears just, even generous. Cheap Seattle considers this proposal to be justified. He considers it to be kind and generous on the part of the whites. For the red man no longer has rights that he need respect. The Red Indians have become so few in number. The Red Indians have become so weak that they don't require to be respected by the whites. And yet, Sir Isaac Stevens is showing us respect, sending us a proposal. He is being kind and generous towards us. And the other may be wise, and the offer may be wise also, as we are no longer in need of an extensive country. Cheap Seattle is saying, this is a very wise proposal. It's a very intelligent proposal, and it is an acceptable offer simply because we Red Indians are now so few in number that we do not require vast tracts of land to live in. What will we do with that land when we are so few in number? Continue. There was a time when our people covered the lands as the waves of a wind-ruffled sea covered its shell-paved floor. Again, he is giving a comparison. He is saying, there was a time when America was filled with, infested with Red Indians, just as innumerable waves and tides in the sea covers the surface of the sea, covers the seabed with billions of small pebbles and stones. Similarly, thousands of Red Indians once filled America. But that time long since passed away with the greatness of tribes that are now but a mournful memory. But that greatness of the Red Indians is gone. They are no longer thousands in number. They have reduced in number. They have become very weak. They are no longer in a position to continue with their enmity with the whites. The glory, the greatness, the prosperity that the Red Indians had once upon a time, that is now a distant memory. It is now a sad memory. That glory is gone. That prosperity is gone. That greatness is gone. That strength is gone. I will not dwell on, nor mourn over our untimely decay. Chief Seattle is saying, this is not the time to dwell upon or talk about how great and glorious and prosperous we were. I am also not ready to cry over what we were in the past. Let us not talk about the past. We are coming untimely to an end. If we do not accept this proposal, if we continue to fight against the whites, all of a sudden we will become extinct. That reproach my pale-faced brothers with hastening it. I'm not going to blame or scold the whites, pale-face meaning whites. I'm not going to blame them. I'm not going to hold them responsible for our dwindling numbers, as we too may have been somewhat to blame. Look at the pragmatic, logical and practical Chief Seattle. He is saying, not only are the whites responsible for our downfall, we ourselves are also partly to be blamed for our present miserable condition. We never stopped fighting. We never stopped dying. It was our fault also. Youth is impulsive. Young people are very, very impulsive. They do things, they commit something due to their hot, excited blood without thinking of the consequences as to what will happen in the future. When your young men grow angry of some real or imaginary wrong and disfigure their faces with black paint, it denotes that their hearts are black and they are often cruel and relentless, and our old men and old women are unable to restrain them. Young Red Indians are also very impulsive. Sometimes they think a wrong has been done to them. Now, whether in reality a wrong has been done to them or it is a false imaginary wrong which they think had been done to them, they are not bothered. They think a wrong has been done, they have to take revenge. They paint their face black because their hearts are black. And they go out to fight. They also prove that they are also cruel and merciless. But the problem is, these young fellows who go out to fight, they die. But what is the result of their death? What is the effect or the impact of their death on the elderly Red Indians, their fathers and mothers? These young fellows never think about it. The old people, the old Red Indians, mothers and fathers cannot control these impulsive young Red Indians. Thus it has ever been. This has been the history of the Red Indians over centuries. They have fought, the young impulsive fellows have fought and died. Thus it was when the white man began to push our forefathers ever westward. This has been happening since the time the whites started settling in America. They started pushing the forefathers of these Red Indians towards the west of America by defeating them in wars and battles. But let us hope that the hostilities between us may never return. Chief Seattle is expressing the hope that this enmity, this hostility between the whites and the Red Indians will never come back in the future. They will sign a peace treaty and they will settle down to live peacefully and comfortably together in America. If we would have everything to lose and nothing to gain, Chief Seattle is saying, if we continue to fight against the whites, who are more in number, who are more powerful now, we will gain nothing but lose everything, because we will become extinct. All Red Indians will die. Revenge by young men is considered gain, even at the cost of their own lives. young people make a mistake. Young Red Indians believe that the best gain is to take revenge. You profit by taking revenge. It doesn't matter if while trying to take the revenge, you lose your life. This is what the Red Indians believe. Try to take revenge on the whites. If you die, it doesn't matter. But the problem is, it did not solve the problem. In fact, it caused harm to the Red Indians because they started going down in numbers. But old men who stay at home in times of war and mothers who have sons to lose know better. The point is, Chief Seattle is saying, these young people fight and die, it's their end. But who suffers? Their old fathers at home suffer. The old mothers who lose their sons, they suffer. These old fathers and mothers know better than these young ones the heavy price that the Red Indians had to pay and will have to pay if they continue to have enmity with the whites, because only the Red Indians will die and virtually come to an end and will be wiped out from the face of this world. So we need to save the fathers and the mothers from losing their sons anymore. And the practical, pragmatic, reasonable, logical Chief Seattle is, if we have to prolong our existence in this world, if we have to survive in this world as long as possible, we better enter into a compromise or a treaty with the whites. And in that case, we better accept the proposal given by the Governor of Washington, Sir Isaac Stevens, and let us live peacefully together. So, in the first page of the story, we have seen that Chief Seattle is arguing and is trying to convince his people that they should accept the proposal sent by Sir Isaac Stevens, the Governor of Washington. Thank you.